We are finally American Orthodoxy. I'm your host, Benjamin Michael, formerly Orthodox Luigi. I've owed you guys this show now for like a year. I've been talking about it for even longer than that. And this type of show has been a dream of mine, a lifelong dream of mine, even back dating to my Protestant days. Running a show like this was really something that I looked forward to one day creating content full time. And you guys are helping making that possible. And I thank you so much for getting me to this point. It is a lot of work running online platforms, and I am absolutely stoked to finally be able to give you guys live content and especially a live news show. As many of you guys know, I'm sort of transitioning into politics. I'm going to get into that later. First of all, I wanted to tell you a little bit why this was delayed. So, I mean, a lot of you guys know who are Orthodox. We just finished Great Lent, and Christ is risen to all my brothers and sisters in the Orthodox Church. We are obviously in the Paschal season now and celebrating the risen Christ. So Christ is risen to all of you. Now, I want to talk about what this show is going to be. So I have, obviously, with my branding, and if you guys read the description, I make it pretty clear about what my vision is with this show. And I took a long time in thinking about the name of the show, because the name really is your brand. It's really what the show, it's really the identity, the DNA of the show. And the reason why I chose American Orthodoxy is actually a double meaning behind the word orthodoxy. So the first is obvious, and that is that as Americans, we need to baptize, or as Orthodox Americans, we need to baptize America. And so what that means is a unique flavor of Orthodoxy that has America's beautiful culture integrated into it. And so the primary purpose of this show is to kind of start a movement of people, of Orthodox Christians that are helping to baptize American culture. Because a lot of people, they kind of, when they convert to Orthodoxy, they sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater with American culture. And the reality is, there's a lot of good things in American culture, family values, Christian values, even though they were Protestant. And actually, there is Orthodox heritage that dates all the way back to the beginning days of American heritage. Philip Ludwell III was a Virginian government official, played a hand in appointing George Washington to colonel, and he was an Orthodox Christian. As many of you also know, Alaska has had Orthodox Christians, Orthodox presence there since before the founding of the United States, back to the 1700s. So there is Orthodox heritage in America, and I would actually argue that there's never been a clear flavor of Christianity or form of Christianity. Obviously, there's only one Christianity, and that's Orthodoxy, but we can sort of use the little c Christianity to just mean like Trinitarianism, and that's what I mean when I say Christianity in this context. There's never really been like a specific form of Christianity that has been American, because Protestant is not a real category. And I've made this point multiple times that, look, like, if you even think about like the founding of our country, many of them that were fleeing here were fleeing another Protestant nation. They were fleeing an Anglican nation, which is Protestantism. So they're fleeing Anglicanism, and they're starting this other country, right, with their various Protestant heritages, but they were anathematizing each other. They're killing each other over theology overseas, across the pond. And it's like, I just don't grant that there's like one form of Protestantism, or that there's been a united form of Christianity in America since the beginning. And so that leads me to say it's kind of there for the taking. As Orthodox Christians, I wouldn't say we have equal claim. I'm not that delusional, but we have a claim. We have heritage that's been here, that's Orthodox. And so what we get to do now in this wave of conversions, and yes, America will be holy, as St. Paisio says, and that's why I wanted to include him in my intro video, because his prophecy of America is very inspirational to me. And look, like, here's the reality. Like, we like to talk about how, America will be holy. we have to like do it. Like God is going to use his servants to make America holy. That's you and me, brothers and sisters. We get to be part of that. And we actually have to do it. It's not just going to happen. Now, God will, if it's not us, God will rise up others, right? But it gets to be us. We get to do it. So that's one thing that I am so excited about is, with this show is really we get to be the tools. We get to be, the ones that actually, Lord willing, through the intercessions of St. Michael the Archangel and St. John Maximovich, who is so present here in the United States. I know so many people that have stories that have been healed by St. John Maximovich. He's very much, in many ways, the patron of American Orthodoxy. I would say him and St. Raphael of Brooklyn. I think Elder Ephraim, when he is canonized, inevitably will also fit into that category. So anyways, that's a long introduction, but you guys kind of get what the intent is here. Just very briefly, many of you guys already know my story. So I formerly was Orthodox Luigi, and that's how most of you guys know me. The reason why I'm rebranding is because I am transitioning into politics, and I do intend to run for office at some point. More importantly, I want to create a movement within the current GOP infrastructure to really provide a foundation for America First, Christian nationalist candidates. And we're going to talk about what I mean by nationalism in a second. And also, forgive me, I am getting over a little bit of a cold, so that's why my voice is a little bit raspy. But we're gonna push through. So I want to talk about Orthodox nationalism, because that was one of the titles of my video here. And a lot of people will say that nationalism is not Orthodox, which I'm about to prove that wrong. So you guys want to see my share screen setup here. So I got my my Dracula theme going on here for Vlad the Impaler. All right, so first of all, my posts, I'm going to go through a lot of my posts today, and it's going to be because I have a lot of resources that you guys can use when you're discussing nationalism with people, because a lot of times people say that nationalism is not Orthodox. And so I wanted to read this quote from St Dumitru Staniloae, sorry. And he says this: "There are various kinds of nationalism. One kind can be a fall into sinfulness, and this is very often what happens. Yet anti-nationalism is a more serious fall into sin, being contrary not only to the Christian way of community life, but also to nature. Like anything genuine, salvific belief in the nation, as opposed to nationalism, need not lead to our destruction if developed in accord with faith. Though not redemptive, it is not destructive. What saves us is faith. The Christian spirit we infuse into national aspiration. Nationalism of itself can neither save nor destroy, but in practice, all nationalism is either redemptive or destructive, according to whether or not it is animated by the Christian faith." So this is significant here, what he says, because he says anti-nationalism is even greater of a sin than the sinful form of nationalism, which is nationalism that's elevated above the faith. And one of the things I point out in my description is that our nationalism must be submitted. It must be submitted to the faith. If it's not, it is sinful. And so what our saints tell us when they address this topic is very simple. It's that nationalism is good if and only if it is submitted to Christ. It's that simple. Now, I want to also go over, and I'm going to share screen again here in a moment, because I just want to reinforce this point here, especially because there's actually a synod, and I've pointed this out to a lot of people who follow me on X before. there's this Russian synod is such a gold mine. All right, so I'm gonna click here. All right, you guys should be able to see that. So I want to highlight a couple things here. So this is from the Russian Synod of 2000, and it says Christian patriotism may be expressed at the same time with regard to a nation as an ethnic community and as a community of its citizens. The Orthodox Christian is called to love his fatherland. Called to love his fatherland. So this is an obligation according to this synod, which has territorial dimension, and his brothers by blood who live everywhere in the world. Now I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you guys see the point here is very clear that, look, we actually, as Orthodox Christians, we actually have an obligation. So not only is this permitted, this national loyalty, and specifically the nation defined as an ethnic community, because that's how and it says brothers by blood. Ethnic community, brothers by blood. That's what it says. It says we have an obligation to that. An obligation. So these are just a couple of the resources. This is all on my X. It's also posted on my Instagram. I'm at Real Ben Michael on all platforms now, so you guys make sure to follow me on all platforms, because I post all this stuff, and I want you guys to have these resources so that when you engage in these conversations, you're able to refute the enemies of the truth. So I want to get into the political climate in the United States right now. Now, I already discussed the fact that I'm moving more into politics. And a big reason for that is my background. So I was getting into a little bit my story earlier, and how I was in politics sort of in the 2020 timeframe. A lot of you guys actually know me from that time frame. And I blew up on TikTok. I had like 300,000 followers on TikTok, and then I got banned because I was like making fun of fat chicks, and it was not good. Well, it was funny, but it got me banned. And so I kind of gave up on politics for a while, and I moved into apologetics, and that's actually what led me down the road to Orthodoxy. And I found Orthodoxy really through my brother-in-law, who was researching church history, and I had a brief conversation with him in the beginning of 2021. And that was really what first got me into Orthodoxy. I realized how little I knew about church history, and I was trying to defend the faith, and I didn't even know like where the Bible came from and things of that nature. And so I very quickly began to kind of go on a tailspin, with my theology, and I realized how shallow my theology really was. And I picked up a book. It's called The Story of Christian Theology by Roger Olson, and it's written by a Protestant. However, it's a pretty good neutral text as far as a summary of church history. I will say, it does focus a lot on like Western history, which is understandable because, again, coming from an evangelical scholar. However, that book, like reading about Orthodoxy in that book, just made me very curious, because here's this, we have basically, as American Christians, like for most of us, like it's basically like, you have the Protestant, Bible, the Bible thumpers, who really follow the New Testament. And then you have those, legalistic Catholics, right? And those are basically like your two options in America. And so this third position was, weird to me, right? When I discovered Orthodoxy, and it really sparked my curiosity. Now, simultaneously, after I discovered that, this evangelical scholar, Roger Olson, he actually implied that, he argued that St. Augustine's soteriology was Calvinistic. And this I found to be not true very quickly. And that's actually one thing that really pushed me towards Orthodoxy. It's funny enough, a lot of people, they disrespect St. Augustine, in the Orthodox Church. But the funny thing about him is he's big reason why I was able to get over Calvinism, because I read where he literally says, you can be regenerate and justified and still fall away. That's not Reformed. For those of you that understand Reformed soteriology, that's not Reformed. So I very quickly realized the holes in St. Augustine, or excuse me, in the narrative that St. Augustine was this Calvinistic, founder. Now, granted, I would say Aquinas, if you read Aquinas, part 1, question 23, I think, of the Summa, that's where he goes over his soteriology, and he's building on the ideas of St. Augustine, and that's where you start to get really this idea of unconditional election and things of that nature. And then eventually, with Calvin, we finally get, perseverance of the saints, and there's all kinds of issues with that doctrine. Excuse me. So anyways, that was kind of the beginnings of my Orthodox journey. I didn't even mention, so I was in the Marine Corps all this time. I just got out. I did 7 years as a Marine Corps officer, and I deployed in 2020. And when I was on deployment, I read through that book, and that was really like the turning point for me. And when I got back, the only reason I didn't convert immediately was because of my soteriology. And so fast forward finally to end of 2023. And at this point, I'd been debating Orthodox and Roman Catholics online a lot on TikTok. And a lot of you guys know me from that timeline. I was literally debating people on iconography. That iconography was the big thing for me because I felt like it was idolatry. I really camped on Nicaea too. I really felt like I had the upper hand on Nicaea too. And so I argued very well, for the reformed position. And I decided, so I was living in Southern California at the time, and my wife at the same time was feeling a little bit unsatisfied with the state of Protestantism and sort of it was very shallow to her. Even though we were going to a confessionally reformed church, it was like a pseudo tradition. And so we decided to go to Divine Liturgy. I wasn't really like considering conversion at this point. It was more just like Father Josiah Trenum was local, and so it's like a no-brainer. Like, let's just go. He's famous, and I've talked about this before. Like, it was walking in there and seeing the icon veneration and seeing the children line up for communion and how well behaved they were, and it was just packed, and it was just like, I want this for my future children. Like, that was what went through my head. And I very quickly realized that I was dead wrong about iconography just by observing it. And so that really launched, finally, that was sort of like the nail in the coffin, because like I'd had the soteriology thing answered with St. Augustine. I had the iconography answered by actually viewing it. And then now there's a lot of good material. There's a good book out there that I've posted about many times. I think it's literally called Ancient Icons. Michael Garton is who wrote it. It's excellent. And that book really covers how Gavin Ortland has just lied, about the history of icons. And so, we encourage you guys to check that out if that's an issue you're struggling with. And I've posted about the documentary that's available for that as well, which has more views than Gavin Ortland's original video. So anyways, this is all a tangent. I want to get back to what kind of started me on this tangent, which was sort of my past and why I landed on politics. So I transitioned into apologetics after I got banned. However, more recently, I've been seeing the shift I haven't been seeing the shift. I've been noticing the detrimental situation we are in the United States. That's really what it is. We are in a detrimental emergency right now in the United States of America. It is nothing but degeneracy. It is nothing but mass migration. It is nothing but sacrificing children to Moloch. It is nothing but serving the nation state of Israel. That's the situation right now in the United States. This is an Israeli occupied government, and it is completely degenerate. And I'm going to get into that later. I have a lot of material for you guys today, so I hope you're ready to stick with it. So we are in a position right now where we need as many people as can handle it to get involved into politics. I really believe that. Now, this is going to play hand in hand in making America Orthodox. A lot of you guys, yes, it's spiritual first and foremost. The spiritual aspect is the fabric, and I'm gonna get into Kodrianu later because that was his view. Is the spiritual aspect is foundational. It can't be political. In fact, he said his movement was spiritual, not political, and the reason why is because he believed that if it was spiritual, it could not be infiltrated, it could not be hijacked. And I'm going to get into his movement later, but that is very much the blueprint for what I believe we need here in the United States. So I want to talk about sort of on the lines of like the political climate and left and right. So I want to talk about sort of the political spectrum and how I view it. A lot of people think that like there's this growing trend with especially far right people who wouldn't call themselves that, but that's kind of what we are. I mean, actually, that's true and also not true at the same time, because I don't really see our view as extremist. There's like those memes like Father Josiah Trenum, like religious extremists. That's a compliment, and like those are funny, and that's true to an extent. But it's like I don't see my view as like extreme. It's like, okay, I want America for the Americans, and I want us to be a Christian nation. And it's like, that's not that crazy. I'd rather, I don't want us to be a Hindu nation. I don't want us to be a Muslim nation. I don't want us to be a secular nation. I want us to be a Christian nation. Like, why is that extremist? That doesn't sound extreme to me. I don't want foreigners to become the majority in my homeland. Is that extreme? Why is that extreme? So, like, I use the term far right just because that's like, I guess, where we fall on the spectrum, but it's like, it's not that extreme. It just shows like how far we've fallen. Like our view, the Pat Buchanan view, and I'm going to get into Pat Buchanan in a little bit here. The Pat Buchanan view is like, to me, that was the normal political view. That was the normal conservative view, really, until Reagan. Reagan was the shift. Reagan is where you get no-fault divorce, you get amnesty for illegals, you get gun control laws. Like Reagan, limited government, anyone can be an American. These are all ideas that come from Reagan, or that at least were popularized under Reagan. Which, by the way, Pat Buchanan did serve under Reagan, but he ran against Bush Sr. because of his concerns about these things. He also served under Nixon. So I'm gonna get into Pat Buchanan. In fact, I'm gonna do that right now because that's a good transition. And first, I want to show this Pam Bondi clip is so funny to me. A lot of you guys probably saw this. Obviously, she's not the Attorney General anymore, but this just had me dying. All right.
The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
Committee will be in order.
All right. So I want to show you guys a quote from Pat Buchanan now after watching that clip. This quote, actually, I'm going to read it. I'm just going to read it straight from his book. because this quote had my jaw on the floor when I read it the first time. And when Pam Bondi came out and said that, what she just said, I was even more impressed with what Pat Buchanan was able to predict. By the way, this is Death of the West. This is a must read by Pat Buchanan, because what he was able to predict in the late 90s and early 2000s. I mean, this guy is talking about the fifth column, the Israeli fifth column in American government. In the 90s, he's talking about this. He's talking about how they're going to start a war with Iran. They're going to start a proxy war with Iran using the United States. Pat Buchanan's talking about this in the 1990s. Are you kidding me? So anyways, I'm getting distracted. This quote specifically is in regards to that Pam Bondi video, because this is just so funny to me. All right, so he says this: with the Democrat Party so beholden to feminism that it cannot even oppose partial birth abortions. True, by the way. And the GOP in thrall to libertarian ideology. Right there. That's what we just talked about with Reagan. And controlled by corporate interests, the call of the gods of the marketplace for women workers prevails over the commands of the God of Genesis. Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. Now listen to this. Many conservatives have succumbed to the heresy of economism, a mirror Marxism that holds that man is an economic animal, that free trade and free markets are the path to peace, prosperity, and happiness, that if only we can get the marginal tax rates right and the capital gains tax abolished, paradise, Dow 36,000 is at hand. He predicted exactly what Pam Bondi said. Well over 36,000, by the way. Well over it. But do you see how he understood? And this is why I have him in my shot. Because his politics, now he's a Roman Catholic, so we'll give him a pass because he got everything else right. His politics were able to identify, his worldview was able to identify that the fight was not over money. It's not about GDP. It's not about the Dow. It's about the soul of America. That's what he understood. And that's what you and I are starting to realize. We're starting to realize that this isn't about economics. This isn't about getting our GDP to rise. By the way, Japan's overall GDP has gone down, but their GDP per capita has gone up. Their quality of life has gone up as their population has decreased, as they've been stricter on immigration. Now, Japan is not a Christian nation, but they have pride in their nation. They have strong borders. They have a national identity. They understand that Japan is for the Japanese. And so, yeah, their overall GDP is going down. Who cares? Who cares? Guess what? Someone working in New York City, I don't know, a lawyer or someone working in tech, whatever. Their GDP is way higher than a Greek fisherman living in a little Greek village, making 40,000 euro a year. Guess what? That Greek fisherman, way happier, way better quality of life than the New York lawyer, than the New Yorker living in a tiny apartment, 300 square feet, $5,000 a month. But their GDP is really high. To hell with GDP. To hell with it. It does matter to an extent. You need a minimum GDP to at least have some sort of economy. But that's not the fight right now in America. It's not over GDP. And to all you people that are coming here and treating my nation like an economic zone, you're coming here, you make money, and then you take it back to your nation. Take it back to India or Pakistan or wherever. Get out. Get out of my country. This is not Disneyland. This is my homeland. This is my home. And yes, you are all going to go back. So anyways, Pat Buchanan. is a national treasure. And you guys have got to read his material. He also wrote an excellent book on World War II. It's just called Churchill, Hitler, and the Unnecessary War. And it's excellent. It's excellent. And I'm going to get into World War I later, and how, World War II, like, just on paper, like, we shouldn't have gotten involved in. We definitely shouldn't have gotten involved in World War I. And I'm going to talk about how we basically caused the downfall of all of Western civilization because we got involved in World War I. Like, I'm not even joking. And this is why I'm so anti-war. This is like my most like woke position, I guess. I hate war. I despise it. I despise it. And it's because of these stupid ass brother wars we've been fighting for hundreds of years, slaughtering each other over nothing. World War I, do you know that historians, they don't even have a consensus over why it was fought? They don't even know why. Like, there's ideas. They have some theories, and I'll get into them later, but there's not even a consensus. The only consensus is the freaking death count. So, anyways, sorry. All right. So, I want to talk about what I believe, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and a lot of people calling me, I don't know, racist and mean and all these things. And, I've made it clear that, like, my politics are submitted to my faith. Look, like, that's the reality. My faith is the most important thing to me. And these guys that are like race over religion, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Race is important. Race is extremely important. And I've made that very clear. Race exists. And I can show you this in the saints, because the people that use the verse, there is no Jew nor Gentile, nor slave nor Greek, or nor slave nor free, nor male nor female. Yeah, guess what? Like, dumb argument, because by that logic, there's also no gender. But also, I can literally show you the saints extrapolating on those verses and explicitly saying that the things such as gender and race remain. And so I have a thread on immigration that I'm probably going to go over later. But I want to talk about Orthodoxy. I want to talk specifically about kind of the basic arguments for Orthodoxy over Roman Catholicism. There's a lot of geopolitical reasons, and Jay Dyer gets into a lot of this. A lot of credit to him. A lot of his material has been helpful for me in sort of helping to refute this notion that the Vatican is going to be some sort of bastion against, international Jewry or something like that, which seems to be what the Groypers think. And no hate to the Groypers. I see you guys as political allies, but I just don't see how your church is really going to be helpful when it's been completely infiltrated. Nostra Aetate was literally written by a homosexual Jewish man who converted to Roman Catholicism to write Nostra Aetate, and then after he converted and completed his work, he apostatized. So it's like, hello, like, and I posted about this on my Instagram. None of this is controversial. It's all open for the public to read. Anyways, so I want to talk about Orthodoxy. Now, a lot of people mistake what I'm saying here. I'm not saying that because the Vatican is infiltrated, therefore it's a false church. That's not my argument. That my argument is simply this. Because of the heresies that the Roman Catholic Church is guilty of, it has resulted in a progressive judgment against them. Now, this began really in the Protestant Reformation and the Enlightenment period, and the French Revolution, which were all the beginnings of the fall of really Western civilization as we know it, and they all gave birth to modernism. And now modernism is infecting the Vatican. and it has successfully infiltrated the Vatican. So how can that church be our bastion? Now, a lot of people like to talk about the infiltration of the Protestant churches, the dispensationalist churches that are a total psyop. And that's all true. But in this sense, Roman Catholicism and Protestantism are two sides of the same coin. What do I mean by this? Protestantism is it's the ultimate form of decentralization to the extent that there is no grounding. Now, even the early days of Protestantism, you have Luther writing against the Jews, and they were not Zionists. This doesn't show up until, a couple hundred years ago. Everybody knows this. However, what Sola Scriptura allowed for is for there to be complete decentralization. There is no grounding. And now you have progressives taking the scriptures and arguing that things like gay marriage are perfectly acceptable. Because if you read Romans 1 in context, that's not what it's about. Do you see what happens when there's no grounding whatsoever? So even though traditional Protestantism is not guilty of this, it was the paradigm that has given birth to it. Now, other side of that coin is Roman Catholicism, which is the ultimate form of centralized authority. It's just a dude. All you got to do is infiltrate one dude. That's it. He's the rock of the church. He's the rock that the whole church stands on. All you got to do is infiltrate him. All you got to do is have some Rothschild money. All you got to do is send a homosexual Jew to write your most important document in your church's constitution, Lumen Gentium. Yeah. Vatican II, all these things. This is all you have to do to infiltrate the Vatican. So Orthodoxy, on the other hand, is decentralized but still grounded. That's why Orthodoxy is the third position, the third option, because we don't have one single form. And I'm going to talk, actually, Kodrianu gets into something very similar to what many people know St. Athanasius is famous for. And I'm going to read something from his book later. But you can't infiltrate the Orthodox Church. It's literally impossible. You can infiltrate a patriarch, like they're trying to do with Constantinople. Sure. Can't infiltrate the Orthodox Church. They've tried a million times. Can't do it. Doesn't work. It's decentralized but grounded. Decentralized but grounded. It can't be done. And the real reason, the biggest reason why it can never be truly infiltrated? Because of our monastics. Our monastics are the anchor of the church. They're the anchor. And so why is it that in America, Go Arch is the most liberal, but our Greek monasteries are the most conservative? Isn't that interesting? They're the most traditional. They're more traditional than Rokor. The Greek monasteries are more traditional than Rokor. And they encourage people going to Rokor churches. So our monasteries are a huge reason. They are the backbone of our church. They're our anchor. Yes, and Christ said so. Amen. Matthew 16. I'm going to go over those arguments here because I want to, like I said, I want to show you guys that when I talk about the infiltration of the Vatican, I'm not saying that that's a reason why they, it is a reason in the sense that it's the fruit, right? It's the fruit, but it's not like an argument in and of itself, is what I'm trying to say. By the way, how's everybody doing? Now that my initial little monologue is done, I got a ton of material for you guys today. So I hope you're ready. I've also got big plans for going forward, and specifically I'm going to be doing call-ins. I have a plan right now to do a segment on Twitter where I like called Let's Ratio, and we'll just like go through Twitter and we'll just ratio people. It'll be fun. I might go on Twitter for this thread actually rather than Instagram. Because I want to show you guys. Oh, we're doing good on viewership over on Twitter. Hey, listen, I have never streamed. I've barely even posted on. I mean, I have no content here on YouTube, and you guys are. I mean, like, I'm not saying it's crazy viewership, but like considering I had 0 viewers, you know, up to this point, and oh, I didn't even mention this. I'm all over the place because I got so much I got to talk about. The monetization on YouTube, so I don't have it yet. And so I need to get to the viewership necessary to do so. And once I do, you know, then I'll be able to do monetization. I also am going to have some like some ads. This particular episode, I just wanted to talk to you guys. Like I just wanted to talk to you guys. I do have my Streamlabs that's pinned in the comments. My Venmo is in the description. Like I said, I don't have Twitter, I don't have YouTube monetization yet, so I can't accept super chats that way, but I can accept them via Streamlabs, and I'll go over them at the end. All right, I need to focus on, I want to show you guys this thread. What do you guys think about that idea about the segment? So like basically I'm just gonna scroll Twitter, and then you guys will literally just help me ratio people. I feel like that could be fun. Okay. All right. So you guys can see this. All right, so this is my thread here. I'll let me repost it so you guys can, those of you guys that want to go actually read through it. I just want to walk through a couple basic things. So these are basically my arguments for why I am convinced the Orthodox Church is like very clearly the church of the first millennium. Like people think that like just because like Rome is like big, so like therefore it must be true, even though like we were both about the same size a couple hundred years ago. There's been times where we were bigger. The reason why we are, you know, as small as we are compared to them is literally because we just faced 1,000 years of Ottoman suppression, and then the Soviets came along, and we have the most martyrs of every church, of any church. So, like, hello. So anyways, that's the size thing. And then also Sunni Islam. Sunni Islam is bigger than the Roman Catholic Communion. So does that mean Sunni Islam is true? It's just a dumb argument. So anyways, so here we are. Yeah, I know this is crazy. 0 viewers. I agree. So a lot of people don't know. They think that like the Great Schism was just over, you know, the papacy or filioque. It also had a lot to do with unleavened bread, which you guys may think is like, you know, not that big of a deal. I'll kind of show you the St. John of Damascus quote later that explains why it is a big deal and why it represents, you know, the resurrected Christ. But the main thing I want to talk about here is, you know, at least on this block, is, you know, look at all the things that they've invented. So let's talk about purgatory first, just very briefly. A lot of people misunderstand like our objection with purgatory. We accept that there's a place called Hades where people experience purgation. This is in the Council of Jerusalem, 1672. People seem to think that this is like the same thing as purgatory. No, it's Hades. It's the biblical Hades. It's the Hades that all the church fathers talk about. And guess what? So everyone that's not immediately glorified, they go to Hades. and they experience purgation there. And we believe that literally everyone can be prayed out. That's how much of a view of intercession we have. We have that high of a view of intercession. And this is in church history. St. Gregory the Great prayed people out of Hades. The Holy Martyr Varus prayed pagans out of Hades. He's the patron saint. I posted him many times. He's the patron saint of those who died outside of the Orthodox faith. So Holy Martyr Varus, a lot of you guys need to look into him if you aren't familiar. Now, what's interesting is if you read, I believe it's 2 Maccabees 12, which is the passage that Roman Catholics go to prove purgatory, to prove that you have to pray for the dead. But here's the thing. They don't believe that if you commit a mortal sin, that you go to purgatory. You go to hell. You go to the lake of fire, which we don't believe exists yet because it's cast, Hades is cast into the lake of fire in Revelation. So they believe there's literally a lake of fire right now that people who are damned go to, and they can't be prayed out. And that's where you go if you commit a mortal sin, if you die in mortal sin. Guess what the people in 2 Maccabees 12 were guilty of? Paganism. That's a mortal sin last time I checked. So why are they being prayed for if they can't be prayed out? If they just committed a mortal sin? So it's so funny how Roman Catholics will go there to prove to Protestants that we should pray for the dead when it contradicts their doctrine of purgatory. What are you talking about? And Voice of Reason, the sophistry of Voice of Reason in his debate with Ubi, bringing up the Council of Jerusalem and saying that we believe in the same thing as them because it says purgation. The hell are you talking about, dude? This has been our view forever. We've always believed that Hades is a place of purgation. Anyways, I'm not going to focus too much on any of these. I mean, College of Cardinals, like, hello, like their entire ecclesiology is new. Their entire ecclesiology is new. We have the same one. Patriarchs, bishops, priests, deacons, archbishops, metropolitans. This is how it's always been. The hell is a College of Cardinals? Muslims and Christians adoring the same God. Muslims and other religions adoring the same God as Christians. You guys have seen my thread multiple times. No, St. Gregory Palamas did not believe this. I refute that in my thread. And listen, I know all their talking points, okay? If you hear a talking point from a Roman Catholic, I almost promise you I have a thread on it. Almost promise you. I have a thread on our patristic witness of Muslims not worshiping the same God as, in fact, Christians in the 800s had to curse the God of Muhammad when they converted from Islam to Christianity. And that's in my thread. So how can it be the same God if converts in the 800s are cursing the God of Muhammad? Does that even make any freaking sense? And the Catechism says not only that they worship the same God, but that they're they're first in the plan of salvation. What? So anyways, yeah, okay, so briefly here on the papacy. So a lot of people think, they misunderstand like our view of the papacy, that it's like just first among equals, which is true to an extent. However, like the Rome as the first see, like there was significant authority in the first millennium that Rome had. And a lot of people will focus on that authority, and the part that they miss is the question of, well, what if Rome falls into heresy? Because this happened on multiple occasions, most famously with Honorius, who's condemned at the Sixth Council. And people will cite Agatho's letter from that council saying that Rome will never fall away. Well, guess what? The Constantinople 869 says the same thing about all the patriarchs anyway. But the same council that accepted this phrase that Rome will never fall away, will never commit heresy, also condemned a pope for heresy? Maybe there's some nuance in the letter stating that Rome can't err. Maybe there's some nuance there, considering they literally condemned a pope for erring at the same council. Anyways, so the five patriarchs in the first millennium. This is so important. This is so important. A lot of people don't understand that there was a pentarchy in the first 1,000 years of the church that has been maintained in the Orthodox Church. So in the first millennium, it was Rome, Constantinople, Antioch, Alexandria, and Jerusalem. Well, as the church has grown, we've added 5 other patriarchs, and obviously Rome fell away, so they're no longer a patriarch. So we have 9, and then every church that each of those has recognized as autocephalous, such as like Cyprus, and there's 5 more of those. So you have to be in communion with a canonical patriarch, or one of the autocephalous churches that they grant to be in the Orthodox Church, and that refutes the which Orthodox Church objection, which I also have a thread on that I can show you guys later. All right, so papal supremacy. This is where the Roman Catholics will try to weasel out of this. They will try to say that, look, like we recognize that like the Pope has to be submitted to something, and so it's not the case that he can just like transcend ecumenical councils. Well, their doctrine says otherwise. Because, well, first of all, okay, I need to back up for a second here. So first of all, the Fifth Ecumenical Council is like detrimental. A lot of people who are not familiar, the Fifth Ecumenical Council, where Pope Vigilius was literally excommunicated. They said his name is not counted amongst Christians. This is an ecumenical council accepted by Roman Catholics. It's the Fifth Ecumenical Council. So I want to show you guys what their burden of proof here is, because this gets crazy. So this is Pastor Eternos. This is from Vatican I. Specifically, I want to point out, so this is referring to when the Pope speaks ex cathedra, that infallibility promised to him in Blessed Peter, and therefore the definitions of the same Roman pontiff are irreformable of themselves and not from the consent of the church. So you don't need the consent of the church, according to Pastor Eternos. Bishop Gasser was assigned to essentially interpret this council, and he says this in his relatio. He says, if these words of Christ are to have their necessary force, and it seems to me that one should conclude the brothers, that is, the bishops, in order that they be firm in the faith, need the aid and advice of Peter and successors, not vice versa. It can be in no way deduced that there is a strict and absolute necessity of seeking that consent from the church or from the bishops. This is saying he can operate without the consent of the church. He doesn't need the consent of the church. And this is where you get the dogma of ex cathedra, is from this idea. Well, why do you even need an ecumenical council? That's my question. Why do you even need it if you can just appeal to ex cathedra? That infallibility granted to Peter was to have past and successors also proved, using the words of this cardinal, from the fact that when the Pope makes a judicial and definitive decision determining that something is heresy and that it must be held as such by the church, then it is clear that we are all bound to accept his decision, and that whoever clings to the opposite view is considered a heretic. Hello? You can't even question him. You can't even question him. There's other texts within Lumen Gentium that that's Vatican II, that explicitly say even when he's not speaking ex cathedra, you have to submit in mind and will. So I don't want to overwhelm you guys with the content here, but you guys need to look through these threads because they'll help you understand the arguments against the papacy. I have this full thread that's separate from the current thread I'm going through that is our view of the papacy. And I recommend you guys educate yourself on that. How are we doing in the chat, folks? How are we doing? All right, so let's move on to Filioque. So the Filioque can be broken down into a couple different things. So there's, first of all, the fact that the Filioque is added to the creed. So it was unilaterally added to the creed in the 11th century at the universal level. But what's interesting is if you rewind back to Constantinople 879, which had every patriarch present, including, it literally had papal legates present. Papal legates signed off on this. And I'm not going to read through this whole thing. It condemns additions to the creed under anathema. And again, the papal legates accepted this in Constantinople 879. And a couple hundred years later, they post hoc decided that this council was invalid and that these anathemas were invalid. What? That doesn't show up till hundreds of years later. Hundreds of years later, that response. Now, like I said, the Filioque can broken up into two separate kind of issues. Like I said, first of all, there's the addition of the creed. This is a knockout argument for that. The second is the doctrine. So this quote by St. Maximus on the doctrine is damning. So first, I'm actually going to read. This is Florence. So this is the Council of Florence. By the way, the Orthodox Church did not accept Florence. The patriarchs explicitly anathematized it, with the sole exception of Constantinople, who then repented. But you need universal consensus of the patriarchs to get a binding decision in the Orthodox Church. That's why we can't be infiltrated, unlike the Roman Catholic Church. And so the other three patriarchs condemned the council under anathema right after it happened, and they never accepted their legate's decision. So unlike Constantinople 879, where Pope John VIII never condemned the decisions of the legates, unlike that, the patriarchs under Florence did condemn it. They never accepted what the legates decided, who were likely coerced. Anyways, this is Florence. This is their dogma. This is the Roman Catholic dogma. Thereby also the Son should be signified, according to the Greeks, indeed as cause. Remember that word. And according to the Latins, as principle of the subsistence of the Holy Spirit, just like the Father. Do you know how insane that is? They're saying that the Son causes the Spirit just like the Father does. So much for the Father being the sole fount. What does St. Maximus say? By the way, this letter at Florence, they called it a forgery. This letter right here is so damning to the Florentine Filioque that at the time they called it a forgery. Now they accept it. Now they know it's not a forgery. Nope. St. Maximus said this. The unanimous documentary evidence of the Latin Fathers is that they have not made the Son the cause of the Spirit. Wait a minute. Cause. Remember that? Remember Florence saying that the Son is the cause of the Spirit? So St. Maximus is defending the Latin Fathers who use this phrase, and he's saying, hey guys, they don't mean this because they're Orthodox. That's what he's saying. Now you can agree or disagree with your interpretation of someone like St. Augustine, whether or not that's what he was saying. That's what St. Maximus is saying here. He's saying, look, I've read them. It's not what they're saying. They, the Latins, know, in fact, that the Father is the only cause. Whoa. Only cause. Only cause. Wait a minute. But Florence says that the Son is cause just like the Father. Interesting. That's very interesting. They, the Latins, know, in fact, that the Father is the only cause of the Son and Spirit, the one by begetting and the other by procession. But they use this expression in order to manifest, eternal manifestation. Interesting. It's also in St. Gregory of Nyssa. In order to manifest the Spirit's coming forth through him, the Son, and in this way to make clear the unity and identity of the essence. That's our position. I often point out with this quote, I could literally not forge a more clear quote. If me, Benjamin Michael, in 2026, was trying to forge a quote that proved my position on the Filioque. I couldn't do better than this. I couldn't do better than this. This covers all the bases. He says, look, guys, I read everybody. I read them. They're not saying this. They're not saying this. Like, it doesn't get any clearer than this. This is the Orthodox position. And it directly contradicts Florence. It can't be clearer. Anyways, all right. Finally, unleavened bread at the Eucharist. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Point is, Damascene, St. John Damascus. Yeah, this is the straw that broke the camel's back of the Great Schism. Okay, like this is actually what caused the Great Schism, was the question of unleavened bread at the Eucharist. Again, like this was agreed until the 9th century. By the way, if you read Roman Catholic apologetics on this, it's comical. They literally say that, oh, well, unleavened bread doesn't make as much of a mess. I'm not joking. Go read Lofton's book. Go read Lofton's book Against Orthodoxy. That's what he says. Not joking. He says it doesn't make as much of a mess. And here's St. John of Damascus that says it's necessary to know that those who bring unleavened bread offer a dead body. Whoa. Offer a dead body, not a living one. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I love St. John of Damascus. He cooks Latins. And then if that doesn't do it for you, man, I mean, like, literally the schism was justified by Rome via a forgery. This is a known forgery that the Pope cited to justify his authority over the East at the schism. Like, what? Now, whether or not he knew it was a forgery is not relevant. The point is that you have to believe that your side was on the right side of history. On the right side of history. Via a forged document. That was what was cited. It wasn't Agatho's letter that was cited. Nope. It wasn't Chalcedon. Nope. It was a forgery. Now, as I pointed out earlier in this thread, and that's it for the thread. If you guys want to, like I said, check this out if you guys want to go in more detail. It's also on my Instagram. My final point on this is, look, like 4 out of the 5 patriarchs. 4 out of the 5 patriarchs were on our side. Simultaneously. And they say we're disorganized. They say that we lack unity. Really? Well, then how come we were able to, with a unified front, excommunicate Rome at Blackernay? How come we were able to do that? I thought we lacked unity because we don't have Rome. Interesting. So there's 5 patriarchs in the first millennium, and at the schism, 4 out of the 5 are on our side. Seems pretty straightforward to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Anyways, so there I was. All right. So that is sort of the basic arguments for the Orthodox Church. As far as the doctrines, there are many arguments, again, that bleed into the second millennium. Some of my best arguments against the papacy actually have to do with papal decrees, or various things that happened, like the Council of Constance, where there was 3 claimants to the papacy in France, Avignon, France. So they tell us, oh guys, Constantinople fell as judgment against the Orthodox Church. Oh, really? How come it fell right after it submitted to Florence, first of all? How come Rome fell and had to move the papacy to France? So if you lived in the 1300s, someone could use that argument against you. Oh, this was a judgment against you. That's why Rome fell. That's how dumb that argument is. So, anyways, that's my arguments. Just reading through the chat a little bit here. I haven't really engaged much with the chat. Muckies. How are you guys doing? We doing good? Is this fun? You guys like this? I know I'm just like yapping a bunch. I got to get a new mug. I want to get like a cool mug. Let me know what mug ideas I should get. I'm going to go over... I'm literally just getting started on this stream, by the way. So we'll see. We'll see. I might break this up into 2 episodes. I'm going to be going over my Voice of Reason debate with Lofton. And because he took it down / is charging for it. So I'm going to react to that debate. Probably episode 3. Because at this rate, I genuinely don't think I'm going to get through all my stuff. On this stream, unless you guys just want me to freaking power through and we'll do like a, I don't know, a 3-hour stream or something. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm definitely going to keep going on a couple of these things. But I have quite a bit of material to go. Thank you to those who are super chatting. I'm trying to find where your comments are, but thank you, Rachel Wilson. You're the GOAT. Thank you, H. Brassy. Thanks, Cleve. Thanks in the filth, and thanks, Meow Meow. Thank you guys for the Streamlabs super chats. And let me check Venmo here. I got a couple on Venmo as well. Thank you, Joshua, on Venmo. So right now, like I explained at the beginning, I don't really have much of a super chat function right now until I get my YouTube set up. I'm having a hard time getting it to populate on here for Streamlabs. So I'm just going to, after this stream, I probably am going to basically have the necessary viewership to be able to get approved for monetization on YouTube, and then I can do the super chats over here. So thank you guys for the donations on Streamlabs. The link is right there in my pinned comment. So thanks to all of you for that. Bear with me as I get the hang of streaming. So a lot of you guys don't realize like how difficult this is. There's a lot of moving parts, and shout out to Fearless Truth, my boy Nick, because he's really the reason why I was able to get this off the ground. He's the GOAT. And the person who said that my intro is like his intro, I just want to tell you that that's been he copied me actually, because I sent him that as an idea. And so, yeah, anyways, Fearless Truth is the GOAT. He's my boy, and he and I have been working together on this Orthodox Worldwide project. Okay. So, continuing. Let's talk about immigration. I've already talked about this a little bit. I want to talk about American identity as well in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about immigration. I want to clarify my position on immigration. And I have my pinned video on Instagram that is addressing this. Look, like, here's the reality, okay? Like, this is the number 2 issue right now behind, like, only the Christian fabric of the nation. Like, that's number 1, because, like, everything else flows from that. And that, a lot of that flows from the American identity that I'm going to talk about later. But here's the reality. Immigration is a state of emergency right now in our country, because if we don't crack down on this issue, we won't have a country. We won't have a country in 10 years, 20 years. It won't be America. It won't be America anymore. If you bring millions of Muslims and Hindu Indians. Not America. That's not America. America's not a melting pot. America's not a melting pot. That's propaganda. And I'm just going to talk about American identity because I think American identity is so important to understand. And I went over this in my question that I answered when I was at Columbia University with Harry Sisson. And I want to debate Harry on this topic. I'm just going to run down briefly the history of immigration propaganda in the last 130 years or so in America. So at the tail end of the 19th century, early 20th century, you have an individual named Israel Zangwill, and he wrote a playwright titled Melting Pot. Now, what's interesting is the actual playwright is not all that subversive, and it was under Teddy Roosevelt that it occurred. And Teddy Roosevelt explicitly says that to be an American, there is no flag but the United States, the flag of the United States. There's no language but the English language, and there's no loyalty to any country except the United States. That's it. That's what Teddy Roosevelt said. He was extremely strong on this issue, even with even with mass migration coming in from various European, because there was quotas. There was quotas. So to maintain the current demographics, the immigration that had to come in had to match the current demographics under Teddy Roosevelt, and then in the 1920s as well. But Teddy Roosevelt was very strong on this issue, and that's where this term melting pot kind of gives rise. And it's funny because when I get into JFK, something similar happened with JFK, even though he was relatively strong on this issue as well. So it's interesting how the subversion happened under strong anti-immigration or presidents that were strong on the issue of immigration. It's funny how the subversion happened then. Now, the New Colossus, which is the poem that's on the Statue of Liberty, which is often cited as the reason why we can bring, all these doctors and engineers from across the world, because it says, bring me your poor and your tired, your hungry masses, longing to breathe free. Well, first of all, that poem was added 17 years after the Statue of Liberty was even donated to us. But also, the poem was written by a Jewish immigrant by the name of Emma Lazarus. And so we see sort of like this same messaging early on from two Jewish individuals, Israel Zangwill and Emma Lazarus. And that's sort of when the propaganda begins for mass migration, or at least preparing the way for mass migration. And when we fast forward to what occurred in 1965, specifically in 1964 with the book, The Nation of Immigrants, which was not actually written by JFK. It was attributed to JFK after he died, but it was written by a member of his team, and the ADL pushed it under his name after he died. Now, we can get into, maybe I'll run another day. I want to save like some of this stuff, but we can get into another day, like all the things behind JFK's assassination. But the reality is, the truth is that book was attributed to him after he died, pushed by the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. And that's how many times have you guys heard nation of immigrants? America is a nation of immigrants. How many times has a boomer said that to you? I can't even count. I can't even count. And that's where it comes from. It comes from that book in the 1960s, right before what? Hart Cellar 1965. So the book, pushed in 1964, prepared the way for 1965 Hart Cellar Act that released all of the prior quotas. Before 1965, there was a couple million Mexicans. There was about 100,000 Muslims total and 15,000 Indians in the entire United States. It was 90% white and Christian. And then most of the 10% was the descendants of the slaves. It was the African-American population. So before 1965, which, by the way, think about all the things America accomplished before 1965. So if anyone ever tells you America was built by immigrants, does that even make any sense when that was the demographics before 1965? Built by European immigrants, maybe. Is that what you mean? The European immigrants that came here and assimilated and experienced ethnogenesis? Because, yeah, by the way, American is an ethnicity. Yes, it is. We have experienced ethnogenesis at this point. I don't speak German. I don't speak any Germanic, well, English is kind of a Germanic language. But our form of English is, our dialect, if you will, is unique to the United States. It's not British English. So we have our own language. We have our own culture. There's actually subcultures within. People say there's no white culture. You've never been to the South. By the way, Fuentes counter-signaling the South the other day. What are we doing here? What are we doing? Bro, the South is America. South is America. Anyways. So, all this to say, this is how ridiculous it is to say that America is a nation of immigrants. When you look at the demographics before Hart-Celler, again, authored by a Jewish person. Now, you can call this anti-Semitic, but it's just the truth. This is not a controversial statement that the propaganda was started by two Jewish individuals, Israel Zangwill and Emma Lazarus. It was pushed by a Jewish organization, the ADL, and then the bill was written by a Jew. This is just like the facts. This isn't controversial. So you can call me whatever you want. You can call me hateful, anti-Semitic, whatever, but that's just facts. These are just uncontroversial facts. And so this is where the entire demographic in America began to change. And now whites are projected to be minorities. I mean, we're less than 60% of the population. And white Christians are only 40% of the population, when that number was 90% in 1965. That's not that long ago. 1965 is not that long ago. So I want to show you guys something, because this blows my mind that that these guys get away with this.
And that's great.
A lot of you guys know this already, but for those of you who don't, who thinks that I'm like some sort of hateful person or white supremacist or something, I want to show you guys this.
And white Americans will soon be a minority, and that's great.
Whites will not be the majority. I mean, it's an exciting transformation of the country. It's an exciting evolution and progress of our country.
We are going to be a white minority very, very soon. I'm okay with that.
If things are so bad, as you say, with the white working class, don't you want to get new Americans in?
America is going to look very different in 100 years. You're not going to be able to tell you're black, you're white, you're Hispanic, you're Puerto Rican, whatever. It's going to be very complex, and I think ultimately that's going to be good.
White Americans feel that they're losing their country, they're losing ownership of the country, and they're right. In the end, they are not the future.
For the first time in American history, the number of white people went down.
White population is declining for the first time in history in America.
White people will not be the majority in the country anymore.
This will be the first generation ever in American history in which whites will be a minority.
Treason to whiteness is loyalty to humanity.
To abolish whiteness is to abolish white people.
White people are committed to being villains in the aggregate, right? We got to take these motherfuckers out.
Was it or was it not the duty of every good revolutionary to kill all newborn white babies?
We have to kill white people.
When do we start killing white people?
I don't want to say we need to go start killing all white folks, but it's like, but maybe.
when we say we want to kill whitey, we don't really mean we want to kill whitey, we do.
We have to exterminate white people off of the face of the planet to solve this problem.
Fuck white people!
An unrelenting stream of immigration, non-stop. Folks like me who are Caucasian of European descent will be in an absolute minority in the United States of America. Absolute minority. That's not a bad thing. That's a source of our strength.
The source of our strength. Because America was just a third world country before 1965. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that it wasn't until the H-1B program showed up in the 1990s. That's when really America became a powerhouse. Yeah, we were a third world nation before then. Give me a break, dude. Someone said in the comments that they don't understand why this issue is being brought up right now. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is the issue. I just explained to you why this issue is so important. This is my homeland. This is my homeland. And I'm becoming a minority in my homeland. My homeland is not the identity that it was built on. My people are openly, none of those people faced any backlash for what they said. They're openly saying we should kill white people. We should kill all white people. We need to exterminate white people. That was in academia, that setting where that black man said we need to exterminate white people off the face of the earth. Like, what are we doing here? And you guys want to criticize me for talking about this issue? If this was any other race, everybody would be dogpiling on the issue. It would be like the only issue. If people were openly calling for all black people to go extinct and they were becoming minorities in their own country, everyone would dogpile on that issue. But when it's whites, it's a good thing. It's okay. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself why that is. I have so many threads that I want to go through with you guys. I think I need to do an episode that is dedicated to immigration, that is dedicated to American identity, that is dedicated to remigration and crime, and the JQ. I have all these things that I still want to go over with you guys, and I'm not going to lie, I'm worried that I'm gonna have too much content for this. I'm like we're already over an hour and a half, and I'm literally worried that this is just gonna be too much content for one stream. What do you guys think? What do you think? I want to hear. I'm open to ideas. First stream, open to ideas. Next episode. I'm going to be doing call-ins for sure. I'm going to be doing call-ins. Almost certainly. Actually, I am certainly. I'm thinking about doing separate streams. So let me know what you guys think about this idea. But I think what I'm going to do is I will do a stream like this, which is just monologue. And then on top of it, I will also do a call-in stream in the evenings where I debate immigration and stuff like that. People are loving it, but a lot of people saying split an episode. Thank you guys for sending in these super chats on Streamlabs. For some reason, if you're attaching chats to it, I can't see that. Like I said, I got to get this fixed. All I see is dollar amount. So thank you guys that are sending that in. You're goated for that. Like I've explained a couple times, I'm going to get YouTube monetization, and then I'll be able to do more super chat stuff. And I'm going to do it where I'll probably read them in blocks. So I'll address super chats, at the end of each kind of segment, if that makes sense. Will I debate theology in the call-ins? I will debate whether or not nationalism is Orthodox or Christian. That I will definitely debate. All right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to I'm gonna skip to Kodrianu. So I'm gonna save a lot of this stuff for another episode. And I'm gonna go over Kodrianu because this is so important to me. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, so Kodrianu is the founder of the Romanian nationalist movement in the 1920s and 30s called the Romanian Iron Guard. Now, when you look it up, it's going to tell you all these nasty things that the Iron Guard did, and 99.999% of it was after Kodrianu died. So Kodrianu was martyred. He was tortured to death, and acid was poured on him in 1938 when he was 39 years old. And after that, his movement tailspinned into a lot of really nasty things that I don't endorse. But I want to talk about his movement because it's important to me, and it's important for the fabric of what I want for American Orthodoxy. As far as his paradigm and his foundation being specifically Christian. Now, I have several threads on my Instagram and on my Twitter, both of which go over the saints that endorse Kodrianu. And actually were part of his movement. There was roughly 8 saints that were part of his movement and endorsed it. And I actually want to read some of these quotes because they're so good. They go over, a lot of the misconceptions about Kodrianu and the legionary movement. Let me pull it up on X here. So I'm going to do this. This will probably take another 20 minutes, so it'll be like a 2-hour stream. We're going to start with that, huh? That sound good to you guys? We're going to start with that, and I will take feedback. So let me know. I think this has been a very successful first stream. Before I go into this closing segment with Kodrianu, I think this has been very successful. The viewership has been pretty good for considering the same thing. Considering, I haven't had like any YouTube traction before this. My Twitter viewership is extremely high. So great start, guys. We're going to be doing this every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at 2:00. Please join up in the future. Like I said, not ending the stream right now. Probably going to go for another 20 minutes. And then I will end the stream. And first, we're gonna go over Kodrianu. So let me pull up the share screen. Like I said, I'm open to feedback. So I'm gonna figure out the super chat thing. I'm sorry that I didn't have that fixed. I really, this first episode, I'm not I'm trying to go full time here. So I really do appreciate the support on Streamlabs and Venmo. I apologize that I don't have YouTube monetization yet, so it's easier for you guys, and so that it's a little bit more engaging. But that will change. This first episode, I didn't want to read any advertisements. I just wanted to talk to you guys. So here we are. It's going to be, I will go over some ads. I have some sponsorships, some cool sponsorships for future episodes. But right now, just wanted to talk to you guys. All right. So, all right. So this thread here, and I'll repost so that you guys can find it easily. So these are a couple quotes from Kodrianu himself that I really there's a couple quotes in this thread that I really appreciate that are in For My Legionaries, which is an excellent. I mean, I'm going to read an excerpt from here that is seriously the best piece of literature. It has me speechless. It's unbelievable. So I point out here, I don't endorse all the things that they did. Even Kodrianu himself expresses regret at the end of his life for a couple things. He did believe he went a little bit too extreme on some things, and this is found in prison notes. But I love this quote. This was early on in his movement. So they were replacing a church service at his university with a class, and he stormed in by himself. He just stormed into the class and started blasting the professor, yelling at him and saying that, this our university's identity, our nation's identity is Christian, and you are trying to uproot our nation's identity here in this university. And he literally was able to not only was he able to stop the class, but he permanently was able to get the church service reinstated. And so this was his quote right at the end of that. He says, "It was at that moment that the belief took hold of me, and it has never left me. The one who fights for God and for his people, even if alone, will never be defeated." So I'm not going to read all these quotes. You guys can see. I'm definitely going to read this Father Justin one because it's so good. I'm going to read parts of it. It covers a lot of ground, and it really talks about their movement. But you guys can read through all these quotes that endorsed, literally were part of the Iron Guard under Kodrianu, and then many of them were martyred following Kodrianu's martyrdom because of the name that the Iron Guard got after Kodrianu was killed. Like I said, it went into a tailspin. I'm also going to read these quotes at the end by Kodrianu because they're so good. So yeah, this one is one of my favorites. This probably is my favorite summary. I'm not going to read all of it. It's very big. But he says this: the initiators of the legionary movement, that's the Iron Guard. They were so real quick, their patron saint was St. Michael the Archangel, which is another reason why I'm very drawn to St. Michael. And so they were the legion of Archangel Michael. The initiators of the legionary movement were, first of all, model Christian people. They were models of society. They brought a great contribution to the nation and to the church in that period. They rebuilt the church and the spiritual life of the people because there had been a certain decline. They maintained a burning flame of prayer. They maintained a living spirit of sacrifice, self-giving, of humanity. Those young people did not pursue political goals, but only to exalt the nation along the line of the church. It was not a matter of some error of putting the nation above the church, but only of bringing the nation into the church. And to the consolidation contributed the highest minds of our culture and spirituality of that time, which we now bury. They succeeded in giving the peasant cheaper bread. That was, moreover, their goal. Besides that, they played a very important role in containing communism. For example, in 1920, when the red flag was hoisted in Iasi above the workshops in Nicolina, alongside Marx's photograph, Kodrianu rose and threw that red flag down there. Then many young people attached themselves to the legionary movement. There were many foreign maneuvers that introduced corruption into our country, especially the Russians and the Jews, who controlled the press, education, and commerce. The legionnaires had nothing against the Jewish people as such. Indeed, there were many Jewish sympathizers of the movement, and Radu Gir himself founded the Jewish theater. However, they rose up against them when they threatened our Romanian territory. Politics has always been like the paganism with which Christianity fought over the centuries since its beginnings. As then, as St. Justin the Martyr and philosophers said, the Christian must renounce pagan immoralities and learn Christian law. Know the true philosophy of cultivating spiritual qualities and then apply them practically in everyday life. This is what the legionary movement did. And their sincere work was crowned by the good God with martyrdom. Of course, those who won wrote history and wrote it as they pleased. They turned the legionnaires into terrorists, Nazis, anti-Semites. It is known that there was a friendly relationship between Kodrianu and the chief rabbi of Romania, who was very impressed by the captain's personality, and they engaged in discussions. The captain was even against Nazism. There's some nuance here with this. I think what he's referring to is in his book, and I have a quote at the end that talks about how he believed that Natsok placed race above the faith, and that was their problem. But yeah, anyways, there's some nuance there. If it not were for the legionary movement, we would have been the same fate as the Serbs, as they were decimated by the Germans, and the protection of the papacy included. After all, both the Russians and the Germans were states with a strong aesthetic doctrine. Romanian youths, sympathizers, or members of the legionary movement were the only ones in Europe who openly rose against communism. They rose up against the totalitarian abuses and the sins promoted by communist doctrine. With all its injustices and scourges, these young people greatly enraged Freemasonry, the enemies of Christianity, and awakened all of Europe from the drowsiness in which it was. These martyrs are inconvenient even after death. See, this is why you guys tell me, some of you guys tell me to be careful about like my support. Like, look, I'm not going to bend to these Jewish communist narratives about them, okay? But they will all come before judgment and will see to whom the truth and justice belonged. If here on earth they cannot be convinced even by our sacrifices, they will be convinced by the decree of God. Depart from me, for I know not you. These martyrs, who were part of the legionary movement, had nothing in common and no connection with Hitlerism. They are now accused of fascism precisely to discredit the movement, yet all the great men of culture of Romania from that period supported this movement. We are not interested in the political question. These young people were imprisoned, especially for their religious convictions, which could influence the Christian masses. So Father Justin is highly venerated in Romania. He will be canonized. He didn't repose very long ago. I believe 90s, early 2000s. But then I list all the actual canonized saints who also support him. There's many more that I didn't even include. But the most detailed quotes are the ones that are in this thread. I love these quotes from Kodrianu here, and I'm going to read this excerpt from his book here in a moment. But he says this For My Legionaries: fascism is preoccupied by the clothing, namely the forms of state organization. Natsok by the body, namely racial eugenics, whereas legionarism is preoccupied by something much deeper, by the soul, namely by its strengthening through the cultivation of Christian values and its preparation with final salvation in mind. Salvation dealt with the Christian church in the most perfect fashion. The ultimate goal in this life is not life, it is resurrection. The resurrection of nations in the name of Jesus Christ the Savior. Creation and culture are only means, not the purpose of resurrection. Culture is the fruit of talent which God implanted in our nation, for which we are responsible. This is so important. Do you guys understand what he's saying here? He's saying we've been given our nation as a talent. It's something we are responsible for, that God has given us to be a steward of. That's why nationalism is so important. We've been given our culture, our nation, as a steward. If we throw it away, we are being a poor steward of what God has given us, what God has implanted in us. Kodrianu was a hero. And I want to finally thank you, Sawyer. Look at that. My things are popping up. I'll get it figured out. I promise, guys. I will get it figured out. It's gonna be the best stream. Okay, the Trump impression's coming out. That's gonna come out later. It's gonna be the best stream, though. It's gonna be good. We're going to figure out the super chats, and it's all going to be good. It's gonna be a lot easier with monetization. All right. So I'm going to read this last piece here before I end the stream. And this is from For My Legionaries, which is an excellent book. By as far as books not written by saints, probably my favorite book. But I want to read this section because it is so important to understand the fight that we're in. And like, you guys have to understand. You guys have to understand the gravity of the situation right now. And you also have to understand what it means to win. And that's what Kodrianu addresses here. Because I think a lot of people think winning is power. Power is great. It's not winning, though. It's not what winning is. He says this: a great moment of collective enlightenment, like the lightning in the middle of a dark night, in which the entire youth of the country recognized its own destiny in life as well as that of its people. This destiny runs brightly through our entire national history, and it extends into our whole Romanian future, pointing the way to life and honor both we and our grandchildren will have to follow, if it is life and honor we wish for our people. Generations can follow this destiny, can stay close to it or depart from it, having thus the capability of giving to their nation a maximum of life and honor or a maximum of dishonor and shame. Sometimes only isolated individuals, abandoned by their generation, can reach this destiny. In that moment, they are the people. They speak in its name. All the millions of dead and of the martyrs of the past are with them, as well as the nation's life of tomorrow. Here, the majority with its opinions does not matter, though it might be 99%. It is not the opinions of the majority that determine this destiny of life for our people. They, majorities, can only get nearer or farther away from it according to their state of consciousness and virtue, or that of unconsciousness and decadence. Our people have not survived through millions of slaves who put their necks under the foreigner's yoke, but through our nation's heroes who faced by the alien yoke did not submit, but put their muzzle loaders on the backs heading up the mountain, paths carrying with them honor and spark of freedom. It was through them our people spoke, not through cowardly and well-behaved majorities. They would conquer or die no matter what. For when they die, the whole people lives from their death and is honored by their honor. They shine in history like golden beacons on the heights bathed at sundown and on the sun's rays. While over the vast lowlands, no matter how extensive and numerous, settles the darkness of forgetfulness and death. It is not he who lives and wins by sacrificing the destiny of his peoples, lives who belongs to national history, but only he who, whether he wins or loses, will hold himself to this destiny. Do you understand what he's saying? He's saying it's not about winning. It's not about popularity. It's not about majority. And it's not about power. It's about carrying on the legacy of the people who went before you and who are with you. That's what matters. That's what it really means to win. And so this is why I will never black pill. I will never black pill because I know what winning looks like. I know that the masses can only get closer or further away only if they are living with the honor of the faithful that went before us. To hell with the masses. To hell with them. Lord willing, this is the phronema, if I will, of American nationalism. This is what I desire for our country. This is what I believe that Christ desires for our country. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been an awesome stream. Glory to God. The viewership was excellent for being my first ever stream. I can't thank you guys enough. And I'm sorry that I couldn't do the super chats. I will figure it out. I promise. And I thank you for the support. Like I said, I'm planning on expanding on this. I'm planning on expanding on these streams, but right now we're doing Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at 2:00 Eastern time. Many of you guys asked why I'm doing it during the day rather than at night. Like I said, I might do call-in streams at night later on, but right now I want to do it during the day because political streamers, because I'm going to be going over news. Like a lot of my show is going to be news. It's going to be politics. It's going to be like 80% politics, 20% Orthodox stuff, and there's a lot of overlap there. So I'm going to be going over news, and people listen while they're at work, and so that's why I do it during the day. So I'm getting clipped. I hope I will get clipped. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in. This was awesome. Please follow me on all platforms at Real Ben Michael. Right now, I'm just streaming on X and YouTube. Please hit that subscribe button down below and also hit the bell notifications so that you know when I post. I'm going to be posting clips from this. So I'll kind of clip it up and I'll make various posts that way. But yeah, I think that's about it, guys. Sorry I'm rusty. First time streaming. Thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for tuning in. Love you guys. Thankful for you guys. And God bless.